the beauty behind natural medicine is that it is, yes, slow acting, but it is that it's working in ways that are not inferior to conventional medicine, but that are actually superior to conventional medicines when it comes to chronic risk reduction, reducing risk of disease. Okay, and that's important because health is really about, or medicine should really be about making patients healthy, not just less diseased, not just managing their disease once it manifests. It's really about preventing the disease and reducing risk. But it takes discipline, takes regular use, but it is scientifically sound and founded in science. So those are the sort of things that I will be speaking about today. Just to give you a little bit of background about Solal Technologies, Solal Technologies is a South African company. Many people are surprised by that when they see our prices, because we are possibly the most expensive company in South Africa for a particular product. And people think that the reason for that must be that you're paying dollars or euros for some international brand. The product's South African, the company's South African. We started in 1998. All the products have been developed by South Africans. I head up the team of development, but there are five of us primarily. There are 2 pharmacists. There's a specialist physician who's got a 13-year medical degree. There's a nutritionist, and there's myself. So it's myself. There's 3 pharmacists, specialist physician, dietitian, and another doctor. There's 6 of us who follow the research. All we do every day is research the evidence that is out there in the medical journals, in the monographs, in the databases, to see at the universities, governmental organizations. You get a lot of information coming from government, which is nice. I must explain something to you. When you get research that is performed by universities or by government, that research is very strong because they publish the results whether they're positive or negative. Remember, if I own a television set, I can choose to show you the television set if I want, but I can also choose to hide the television set in the back of the cupboard, or I can choose to bash the television set to bits. It's my television set. I can do what I want. If you're a pharmaceutical company that has performed the research on your own product, because you've got to by law do that to have it registered, you've got to perform the research to show the government of the particular government that your product is safe and that your product's effective. The government's not going to do that research for you. You've got to do it. You own that research. If the research is negative, you are allowed to withhold it. This is what happened with Prozac. Prozac, they withheld the information. They knew about it, but they withheld the information that Prozac causes suicidal ideation, increased risk of suicide in teenagers. They knew about it, but they withheld it because they had a right to do so. Same happened with Vioxx. Vioxx knew that it caused heart valve damage. They knew about it, but they withheld it. It wasn't something that came out afterwards. And this is why we've got the lawsuits against those companies, because they had knowledge of it, but they chose to withhold it. So when you often look at research surrounding pharmaceutical medications, although the research, I'm not saying the research is false, the research is true, but what I'm saying is it's often skewed. It's skewed in favor of the positive, whilst the negative is often withheld. Whereas if you're looking at something that's done by a university or something that's done by government, for example, the Canadian government that does a huge amount of research into natural medicines. For example, they're the first government to recommend omega-3 supplementation from fish for reducing risk of cardiovascular disease. When they do the research, it's unbiased and the results are published no matter what. So oftentimes when people say to me, natural medicine research is worse or inferior or non-existent compared to conventional prescription medicine, I tend to disagree. The research is often purer, it's often more unbiased, and it's always published. So you can see the negative with the positive. Okay, so just getting back to what we do at Solal, we research the science out there and we develop products based on that. The reason we are more expensive, and this is important, is because we will put the doses into the product that matches the dose that's used in clinical trials. Okay, so, and what often happens with expensive ingredients, it doesn't happen with cheap ingredients, but with expensive ingredients is companies will put in way too little of the active ingredient. And they can get away with it because at the moment there are no laws in this country. I sit on the Executive Council of the Health Products Association, and I also speak to government quite a bit in an advisory capacity relating to what regulations we feel should be in the marketplace. And at the moment, there are no regulations in the marketplace, depending who you speak to. You speak to some government officials, they say, no, Act 101. You speak to another government official, they say, no, it's the Foodstuffs Act. But whatever the act different government departments feel that is in control, in reality, companies are getting away with murder because nothing is enforced. And there really actually is no law relating to complementary medicines. That law is coming, thank goodness, because it will dictate what sort of things you can say and how much you must put in of a substance before you can make that claim. And the perfect example I often give is 5-HTP, because it's expensive. 5-HTP, depending on the exchange rate, will cost you 12 to 24,000 rand, 12 to 25,000 rand per kilogram as a manufacturer. So if I put into a product 20 milligrams of 5-HTP per day, per daily dose, I can say, and do say, I don't, but as some manufacturers do, contains 5-HTP, excellent for depression. And if you say prove it, they will even show you evidence that 5-HTP is useful for depression. And they'll show you the mechanism of action behind how 5-HTP raises serotonin and therefore is useful for depression. But you've got to look very carefully to see it's not 20 milligrams. It's more like 200 to 300 milligrams per day that you need of 5-HTP to reduce depression. Now, if it's 20,000 rand a kilogram, taking 20 milligrams versus 200 milligrams is going to cost you 10 times less or 10 times more, depending which way you're looking at it. That is one of the reasons why we're more expensive, because we put in the doses that are effective. The same with coenzyme Q10, the same with resveratrol, the same with all the expensive ingredients, we will put in the effective dose. The next thing I must point out is if there is in clinical studies, now just by the way, what clinical means, it means tested on humans for safety or for effectiveness. All too often I see in this industry companies or products making a claim clinically tested or clinically proven. If it's tested on an animal, it's not clinical, okay? Even if it's tested for effectiveness or for safety. Now, I'm not saying animal studies are to be discounted. They are very valuable because you can often extrapolate the information, but it's not clinical. It's got to be on humans. And if it's on humans to test the absorption, that's not testing effectiveness, that's not testing safety. That's testing a pharmacokinetic parameter of whether the substance is absorbed or not. That's also not clinical, because clinical, you've got to test, is it effective for what you're saying it should be used for? So, and a study showing that paracetamol is absorbed from the intestine is not clinical. A study showing that paracetamol treats a headache in human beings is clinical. Or if it's showing that paracetamol doesn't have a safety concern, say for cancer, that's also clinical.